Hi, Brendan. So you know me, I'm John Dickie. I'm Director of Child Poverty Action Group in Scotland. So the question I think we've been asked to discuss is, how does PACT complement existing school-based anti-poverty interventions? I suppose as an organisation working to end child poverty in Scotland and across the UK, for us, this is hugely important, and this work really does complement work certainly that we're involved with in schools across Scotland. We've long realised and understood the way that poverty too often excludes, means that children and young people aren't able to fully participate in everything that Scotland's education system has to offer. And too often there are financial barriers and cost barriers that exacerbate the poverty that young people are experiencing at home. So we've, over the last few years, been developing what we call our Cost of the School Day project and resources, working with children, young people, parents and school communities to identify the cost barriers, the financial barriers that exist, and supporting school communities to remove, reduce and overcome those barriers. All that work rests on teachers having a real understanding of poverty and the way it impacts on children and young people.
I think this is the good thing about PACT, because it's going to kind of deepen that understanding as well. I think it's quite unique in terms of the offer. It's not something that's been replicated or been done previously. So I think it's, it's something that's fresh off the shelf, so to speak. It's based on solid research as well. So I think it's going to give that wider perspective as well. I also think the programme fits really well with obviously the Scottish Attainment Challenge with PEF, and will help schools as well to just give that fuller picture. So I know that schools are really tuning into kind of equity-related factors and looking at data and, all of that kind of intelligence that they've got. But I think that PACT adds a new dimension to that, a kind of stronger underpinning to it, really, and will really help to kind of raise the profile of.
I think that's absolutely right. I think it's that evidence-based learning, that evidence-based support to the professionals that are on the front line, and all this other work sits and rests on that. And I think that's why we're so excited about PACT and about the learning that it provides. And I suppose just that it couldn't come at a more timely moment in terms of just everything we know about the way that the current pandemic is impacting economically on families, and the additional pressure on family incomes and the additional pressure that's putting on children and young people, that awareness of how that plays out in our education system, and the role that schools themselves can play in promoting equity, in reducing the inequalities that are created outside the classroom but that play out in the classroom.
I think it's also about seeing the way that PACT will fit in, as you've said already, in terms of the work that your organisation has done in terms of Cost of the School Day and things like that. Also seeing how PACT will fit in and kind of complement other interventions that may be taking place in schools already. So where there are maybe involvement from community groups or other organisations, the work that PACT can the kind of other dimension that PACT can bring to that, I suppose, in the way that all fits together. And it shouldn't be seen as something that's an add-on. It is genuinely going to complement the existing work that's taking place. But I suppose it's about schools kind of joining the dots and authorities joining the dots to see how that all fits together, and ensuring that that's done and delivered in the most meaningful way, rather than being something that's separate and that's removed from work that's already taken place or had an impact.
Absolutely. I think that's something that we are very aware of, that a lot of this knowledge and understanding already exists in schools with teachers, and opportunities like this to share that learning, build on what individual teachers, individual schools already know, and share that learning across schools. It seems to me something that this project really is helping to deliver. It's a lot of this is about helping understand what's going on in wider society and how that's impacting in classrooms across the country. But teachers themselves have a very real frontline understanding of how that plays out. This project, I think, helps to give teachers the my sense of it is that the opportunity to reflect on what they're seeing on a day-to-day basis, to understand that, and to build on quite often what's already very good work that's going on in schools to try and achieve and promote equity in learning and equity in the classroom, even when there's such inequalities existing in our wider society.
Yeah, I think as well, particularly currently we're talking about, a real focus on health and well-being as well, and having that real distinct focus. And things are very busy, obviously, in schools just now, and people are trying to juggle a lot of things. But I think if we can really look at PACT as something that's going to enhance what's already taken place as well, I think that only strengthen the great work that is going on across the country already.
Yeah. I mean, have you seen that already happening in terms of, I suppose in terms of the way the PACT learning has been accessed so far in terms of what the,
I think just it's about continuing to kind of promote it as well, and extend the reach of the programme as well to ensure that we've managed to kind of reach as many practitioners as possible. Because I think only that way then, if practitioners really see the value of it and understand the rationale behind it and then buy in to it, that's when obviously we're going to see the greatest impact in terms of what's on offer for the children and the young people.
Absolutely. One of the things we're kind of looking forward to and are already hoping to do is make sure that when we're in contact with schools and with professionals in schools, that we're pointing them to PACT as a learning resource, and likewise, I think the PACT interventions pointing to some of the cost of school day work in terms of how to take it to how to develop the learning that is inherent in the PACT approach, and use that give a focus for then actually taking practical actions that can help to remove costs and remove financial barriers to participation in school. I think there's a real complementarity there between the PACT resources and other resources like the cost of school day resources in terms of providing additional toolkits for teachers to then use to work with their classes and with the school community to just identify where the financial barriers are to participation, whether that's the cost of school uniform or the cost of school lunches, or whether it's the cost of materials for particular classes. One of the things that's become particularly acute during lockdown that we've seen, I don't know how it's played out in your experience, but just access to digital equipment, access to devices and online connectivity, just to enable, in normal times, crucial to enable children to be able to do the kind of home learning and homework and that's taken for granted by many. But during lockdown, even more acute in terms of just being able to maintain that learning, and potentially in the future, being able to kind of, whether maybe blended learning in the future, being able to fully participate and fully access their learning.
Yeah,
I suppose
something there, John, you're talking about, involving communities as well. So it may be that, through the PACT programme as well, some schools might start to kind of reflect more on involving other community groups as well, and trying to kind of strengthen those links and seeing that the richness that can bring as well, and really instilling that kind of belief in teachers that they can make a difference, but they can't do it in isolation. It's got to be a collective effort.
I mean, that's one thing we're absolutely clear on, that there's a real role for teachers, and this project PACT is so important in terms of supporting teachers and providing that learning and that evidence-based learning to understand how poverty is impacting on the children and young people they're working with. But we're also very clear that teachers, schools can't solve poverty in Scotland. There are wider structural, economic, labour market inadequacies in our social security system that are creating the poverty that too many children face. And we can't lay all that on teachers to stop all that. But what they can do is be very aware of how that's impacting on the young people they're working with, and be through that awareness identifying what can be done within classrooms, within schools, to remove and reduce the barriers and create as much equity as possible within the classroom.
I think that's where PACT will fit in perfectly. Then it's just to, it's adding that extra kind of dimension to that work, isn't it?
Absolutely. Have you seen, I suppose, just in your own school and your own, you were talking there about for engaging with the wider community in addressing some of these issues. Just what, I'd be interested to hear what kind of experience or what kind of experience you've had of that yourselves.
I think quite often for schools it can be challenging because there's so much out there, but it's about signposting the schools to the resources as well, or to the support that's out there. And quite often, schools are so busy that there are so many other things going on. It's really difficult to try and pick out or access the support that's available. So that's certainly something that we've tried to do within our authority, trying to ensure that schools are really aware of the other organisations that exist and can really complement the work that's taking place. But that can be challenging as well, because obviously, there is so much out there, and some of it maybe isn't applicable to the education setting, or schools maybe don't qualify for some of the, the benefits that can bring. But for us, it's definitely about trying to support schools to signpost them to those kind of organisations to ensure that children, young people and their families are fully supported.
That's with something like PACT and the learning and the awareness raising that it supports can help to inform and create that environment and understanding that then helps teachers themselves to be able to access potentially the wider supports that there are in the community.
Yeah, absolutely.